Hey Emma,
Yes, Madeline.
what do you call a spin-off I've come up with to this week's old game featuring an undead fish dish who's a little more grown up?
I don't know. What would you call it?
Ghost of Super Sushi Man. Hello, and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I thought that was a good one.
Good. Are ghosts undead? Would you call them undead? Or does that have to be like flesh?
So, I wouldn't call myself an expert in all things undead, to be honest. But I felt that for the purposes of the joke, maybe I should have gone with spectral. You're right.
Just curious about the... It wasn't a critique of the joke. I just found myself wondering immediately afterward, like, would you describe a ghost as undead, or are they just dead-ish?
That is a difficult question to answer. Given that the usual phrase is undead and not deadish.
Dead adjacent.
This feels like an argument they would have on What We Do in the Shadows. I like dead adjacent, though.
Yeah.
Although that I feel like opens to a whole other category of at what age do you become dead adjacent?
Aren't we all dead adjacent? Really?
Oh, listeners, thanks for tuning in. I'm your deadish host, Madeline.
I'm your living-ish host, Emma.
And you're listening to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone. Didn't we do this already?
I just get stuck in a loop sometimes. And it's a loop in homage to this week's old game, which is Super Meat Boy, which you probably got from Super Sushi Man.
Probably.
You probably got that. And also, our new game this week is Ghost of Tsushima, which I'm gonna feel worried that I'm mispronouncing the entire show.
I think you're good. I keep thinking it's ghosts, but it's just the one ghost.
You are the ghost.
Yes, just the singular ghost of Tsushima.
So let's talk meat.
Yeah. I'm partial to chicken.
Perfect. I don't eat it. Cool. Thanks for listening, everybody. Tune in next week. Emma will be sharing her recipe for hot chocolate sugar cookies.
Malin's all about super... What's the fake burger called?
Impossible Burger?
Yeah, super Impossible Burger.
I don't really like
man.
Impossible Burger that much.
Well, never mind then.
Anyway, Super Meat Boy is a 2010 platformer from Team Meat. Imagine putting that on your resume.
I mean, everybody would know what you're referring to.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it would be very, very clear. But still, imagine having to put that on your LinkedIn.
Everybody would know what you were referring to, you know?
Except
it's clear.
for the people you went to high school with, who are the only people that you connect with on LinkedIn anyway. I'd be like, oh, Team Meat? That's weird.
Well, you know, usually
anyway.
on your LinkedIn you put a little bit more description of it. But yeah, I see your point.
But who goes on LinkedIn?
Well, then it doesn't matter.
At the emails that are like, Madeline, do you know this person? And imagine getting that. You look in and it's like, consultant at Team Meat.
I don't think
and
consultant.
You go, that's weird.
Probably
Delete.
be founder.
Okay, I mean, there are other people that work there now.
It's true.
But founder at Team Meat is almost worse. Because that doesn't even... If you're a consultant, there's a little bit of... Anyway, I'm going to get off this tangent.
Okay.
Super Meat Boy was originally released on the Xbox 360, on the Xbox Live Arcade, and now it's on basically everything. It actually wasn't on basically everything in that generation, but it is on basically everything that you own as a console now. It is also on the Wikipedia Greatest Games of All Time list.
Wow.
Which I wasn't expecting.
I feel like it's been a while.
I know. We've been looking at some subpar games.
Yes, it was originally supposed to be a WiiWare game, which I only sort of know what WiiWare is, to be honest, but it ended up not doing WiiWare because it became too big for it, and then no publishers thought that putting it on the Wii retail was a good idea in that part of the generation, so it did not end up coming out on Wii.
But that was fine because Super Meat Boy was still a very big success.
Yeah.
Despite, by all accounts, what seems to be just a terrible end to the development process.
Yes.
So Super Meat Boy was my game that I played this time. I opted for the $15 game and not the $60 game. I hope you'll forgive me.
Smart choice.
I also opted for the game that I felt like, oh, I could get a handle on what this is like, as opposed to Ghost of Tsushima, where I was like, well, maybe I can play an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So this was my game that I played this week. And in this game, I mean, like we said, it's a platformer, and Super Meat Boy, I feel like is one of those the first in that wave of like super hard platforming games that are now a real staple of the indie community.
I think that's fair. It was a Flash game first, which I think is maybe where some of that DNA comes from anyway.
Absolutely. It was a 2008 Flash game, prototype, or original. Some things I've seen refer to Super Meat Boy as a sequel. Some things I've seen refer to Meat Boy as just a prototype. So we can quibble about what that means. But yeah, you can still play it. You can still play the prototype for free on Newgrounds. Mm-hmm. If you still have Flash.
Yeah. Which
Adobe just the other day was prompting me to get rid of Flash on my computer before it is obsolete at the end of the year. But it won't disappear at the end of the year. Newgrounds has like a thing that hosts it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm sure.
But yeah, that Flash game was so successful that both Microsoft and Nintendo were interested in the team making a game for their services, and ultimately they ended up making Super Meat Boy for Microsoft after pitching a bunch of other games, I think.
Yeah.
So anyway, in this game, you play as cubic red Meat Boy, and your girlfriend, Bandage Girl, gets abducted by Dr. Fetus.
Yeah.
Which really it feels emblematic of the humor of this game.
Yeah.
There's a specific brand of, like, adult male. I don't mean, like, adult men. I mean, like, of, like, adult humor for teenage boys that I feel like is the ethos of Super Meat Boy. Does not meant as a diss at the game.
Yeah.
It's just like,
I mean, I don't even know if I'd call it humor necessarily. It's just the aesthetic of it is this sort of like gross out that's like funny.
That's the technical
but
term.
It's funny to the target audience, I guess. But it's not like humor.
Mad funny.
I guess. It's not mad funny, you're right. Yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, Team Meat. We have never heard teenage boys refer to your game as mad funny, so clearly got to work on something.
So Dr. Fetus is apparently an intelligent fetus in like a life support suit. That was not clear to me. I didn't take a close enough look at the model. So I was just like, why is he called Dr. Fetus? Like, that's weird. But yeah, apparently he's an intelligent fetus. And you gotta follow him, a la Mario following Bowser to rescue Peach, by not getting ground up into meat in all of the various contraptions that you have to jump on through.
Yes, the developers have described Super Meat Boy as them making Super Mario, basically, for a more modern audience, too.
Yes, they consider it a tribute to Miyamoto, which I wonder if he would feel that way.
I'm sure Miyamoto's very cool. I'm sure he's a hip dude.
I guess what I'm saying is that you get a poop clone of you at some point in the game, which is just a bold thing to include in a tribute to anyone. I made this in your honor. Here, look, in level 3, you make a clone of yourself called Brownie, made out of feces.
Sure. You know? If I were to get a tribute, I would want it to be bold, you know, and that is certainly bold.
I'll bear this in mind for Christmas this year.
Please do not make a sculpture of me out of feces. I will, that's not the kind of bold I would like to see. Thank you.
We'll move on. Anyway, in this game, you also, like, every time you die, you go back to the beginning. It was nice. I enjoyed, I played through the whole first world of Super Meat Boy, which, there are like 300 levels. I played about 30. I had a fun time with it. It is nice in that it reloads really, like, you just jump right back to the beginning really fast, which is really important to me in these kinds of games, because I have little patience for doing things over and over. Just in general. And the levels overall, with the exception of, like, the boss level, but that one was challenging enough in a different way that I didn't mind doing it over and over. All the levels are pretty short.
Yeah.
I spent more than my fair share of time on some of them going for, like, the bonus band-aids. Not that I knew what they did, just that I knew they were a bonus, so I ought to be getting them. A couple of times I did manage to pull it off. There was one level where I tried, like, 50 times. And I could not get the Band-Aid. And eventually I just gave up.
I mean, like, a lot of the design, like, you can see, like, how it has inspired or informed modern-day platformers as well. Like,
modern day.
Yeah. Well.
As opposed to the ages ago that was 2010. Yeah,
I mean, it's been, like, 30 years, I think. We're really talking about an old game this time. All of our old games have a +10 multiplier currently.
The 1910 platformer is Super Meat Boy.
But, like, even if you look at, like,
that's called The Jungle.
Like something like Celeste, right? There's the idea of, like, a lot of the levels are just one screen, and then they're pretty fast, and there's, like, the instant reload time. And also in the idea of, like, you can go get the strawberries if you want, but you don't have to in order to keep progressing.
Absolutely. Unless you're me, in which case you do have to.
Of course.
Yeah, it's most like, I mean, the most recent game that I played for the podcast that was, like, you know, in this style was Katana Zero, which is not at all this. Like, Katana Zero is quite different. In fact, you know what? Katana Zero would be a good contender for a mashup of Super Meat Boy and Ghost of Tsushima, actually, now that I think about it.
That's good.
So I'm glad I got that out of the way so that we don't invent that game and then think, huh, why does that sound familiar?
Who knows? Doesn't matter. It's probably fine.
Forget about it. Blood splatter, you're playing kind of a samurai guy. Quick reload, replay at the end of the level. Oh man, mashup this is gonna be hard with that.
Yeah, now you've introduced that idea into our heads and we'll never escape it.
Oops. Anyway, it's sort of similar to Katana Zero. Katana Zero was cool because at the end of each stage you got to, like, watch the tape of yourself back.
Yeah.
And Super Meat Boy, you get to do that, except you watch all of the Meat Boys at once. Which they've talked about. Like, there are a couple interviews with these guys talking about how, and I thought that this stuck out to me because I've been reading so much about Hades wanting to make death fun, or at least not punishing. And so that the hard platformer version of that, of making death fun, is, well, you at least get to watch yourself explode into meat juice. That's what Wikipedia calls it. I thought it was blood, but Wikipedia refers to it as meat juice.
Well, he is meat. So.
What do you think is the juice that's in meat, Emma?
I mean, blood.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm just saying. It's specifying. It's reminding you that he is indeed meat.
Anyway, you get to watch all of the iterations of Meat Boy make their way mostly to death, but eventually through the level. Which really made me think of, like, man, I hope there are people who are out there, I'm sure that they are, who are just making kaleidoscopic Meat Boy creations.
That'd be
fun. It was kind of soothing.
Yeah.
It was like, look at the meat just splattering everywhere. Look at all the times that I just, like, jumped straight into a saw right away because I wasn't paying attention. Look at the time that I was doing the boss fight and I didn't realize the cutscene had ended and I got run over by the boss, like, 5 times before I realized that I should be playing. I was like, that's so weird that the boss is, like, rolling out a bunch of times in a row. Like, do I need to press the A button? And it was the level. But yeah, it was fun. It was hard. Like, the first world I would not describe as, like, crazy hard. It became hard because I was so stubborn about getting the bandages.
Yeah.
But for a game that is, like, one of the prototypical, like, this is a hard games, I didn't find, like, the base level of it super difficult.
They did describe that they have, like, there's, like, the dark world version of it, too, that I think you can either start from the beginning or start after you've played the original version, that basically, like, starts in difficulty where the game would end in difficulty, and then scales up the same way in order to offer an option to more advanced players who wanted to challenge themselves, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. I mostly just mean, like, there are definitely reviews out there about Super Meat Boy where, like, the one con is that it's too hard. And so I was expecting this to maybe be even more difficult than it was. And I didn't find the first world. There were certainly levels that were more challenging than others, but I never spent more than 10, and, like, I wouldn't have even spent that long. I never spent more than 10 minutes on a single screen. And, I mean, even that feels like embarrassingly long, right? But I wouldn't even have spent that long if I hadn't been going for the dumb bandage.
What Madelyn's trying to say is that she is a pro gamer.
That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that I don't play too many platformers. I don't consider myself to be especially good at platformers, but I did fine playing through the first world of this. And I really enjoyed the first boss level. You're chased by, like a chainsaw monster, basically. And I really enjoyed the flow of that level. I felt like that level made me feel like a speedrunner. in the best possible way. Like, not in a way that I was really fooled into thinking that I was a speedrunner, but that level made me feel like, yeah, like, I'm getting in the flow of this. And yeah, sometimes I would fall out of the flow and I would jump into the first meat grinder, like, 3 times in a row, reminding me that I am not a speedrunner. But it was nice. It really gave, like, that moment in the game, I was like, I understand why this was such a kind of an inspirational touchstone for the indie kind of platforming industry. That's, like, way too formal a term. But for indie platformers, so, like, that felt good. Felt really good.
I did watch, like, or half-watched, it really is probably more accurate to put it, like, a 17-minute speed run of the game.
That's nutty.
You're not to this boss yet, but I did watch this part and I was like, oh man. There's one boss where there's, like, these, like, I don't know what they actually are, but they look like bugs or worms coming out of the ground, and there's, like, gears, the saws on either side, and you can just jump through the middle of the saws and then just stand behind the saws, and the worms will all go into the saws. And
that is over. One thing I didn't love, is that the squirrels will grind themselves.
The squirrels?
There are occasionally, like, squirrels and rabbits in the world. There's a cutscene about this at the end of the first boss fight, and they will, if you scare them, will run into the meat grinders.
Yeah.
It just didn't feel necessary.
But anyway, I was thinking about the flow of the boss fight, and I was thinking about this one speedrunner that just, like, stands behind the thing while the boss kills itself in about, like, 10 seconds. I was like, yeah, flow. The flow of the speedrunner.
Nice. Oh, man. Anyway, just for the record, I ended up getting it on PS4, despite your suggestion of Switch, even though I then learned after the fact that the Switch has a split-screen race mode. But, I'm too lazy I don't have an external hard drive for my Switch, so I have to delete stuff.
Well, considering it is about, like, precision of your jumping, maybe Switch wasn't the best idea anyway.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I can't argue with you there. So Super Meat Boy, you might also got kind of famous because it was featured in Indie Game the Movie. It's one of the big projects in that game.
Oh, right.
Which is why we know about, like, how brutal the end of the process was for this team. That basically Microsoft told them that they wanted them to have it ready for, like, some kind of Xbox Live Arcade promotional event.
Yeah.
that was like a month or 2 months away.
2 months away, yeah.
And the team, which by the way, they worked like remotely pretty much the whole time, so ahead of their time, really.
Well, there's only 2 of them, so it seems like a waste to get office space.
Or like to move to the other side of the country, yeah. But yeah, it sounds pretty awful.
Yeah, so I actually read about this in like a magazine interview that they did that was republished on Game of Sutra. So they haven't been like hiding about it.
Yeah.
But basically, Microsoft said that either they were ready for this festival and then they would launch right afterwards, or they could launch whenever they wanted without any Microsoft support, or they could wait all the way till spring. And at this point, they were both running low on money, to put it mildly. So they didn't think that they could either wait for spring or try to launch without Microsoft. So they fit like 4 months of work into 2 months to get it ready in time. And then, despite getting some good positive reception, Microsoft came back saying like, well, we don't think this will sell very well. And gave them like a pretty lackluster launch. And then like no support after that. So they talked about how like they regret, like the postmortems in Game of Sutra, like the 5 things that went well and the 5 things that didn't go well. So they talked about just regretting doing that at all because it didn't seem like they really needed Microsoft support in order for the game to do well.
Yeah, the game wildly outsold everything else in the promotion, even without any marketing, basically.
Yeah.
I did think it was such an interesting indicator of how much the indie scene has changed in the past 10 years. I was reading another article with, so Team Meat has since, like, they've parted ways, because one of the designers had some other game that I
Binding
don't
of
remember the name
Isaac was one of them,
Thank
I
you.
believe.
It also got big. Pretty amicably, it seems like, but just they needed enough time to be doing their cursed sequel, Super Meat Boy Forever.
Yes.
Which maybe the Forever was the wrong choice.
And once you put Forever on the end of your game title, you're just asking for trouble, I think, is the history of game development.
Nomura, don't listen to this. Kingdom Hearts Forever. Anyway. But no, I just feel like in this interview with the guy who is still working on that game, he was talking about how, even though they didn't get all that support or anything like that in some ways that there was still this kind of golden ticket to Xbox Live, and that if you could make a good game and you could get it on one of those things, that it would do well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even like he talks about like how even that wasn't really true, but it was way more true than it was now. Just because there wasn't such a like a gigantic array of games and ways to promote games. Mm-hmm. And the visibility was so much harder. So like obviously like, in Indie Game the Movie, they like interview people after the fact and they're like so excited that they can provide for their families.
Yeah.
And then also now with Super Meat Boy Forever, which obviously has been in development now in multiple forms for years, it's Tommy Rafines? I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but who's the lead developer on it, has talked about how, like, because they've made so much money with Super Meat Boy, they don't have to rush this game. Mm-hmm. And because they cut a deal to be an Epic Games exclusive, they don't have to rush this game because they have enough money. It was interesting to hear him talk about that in such a level-headed way, because he was like, yeah, we knew we were going to get some hate for this, but, well, one, we don't care about the people who are giving us hate for this because they aren't buying our game anyway. But two, that if given a choice between having the money to do this in a sane way and to have the team that I needed, and the choice between not getting a little bit of hate for being an Epic exclusive, like, obviously I'm going to take the money.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole appeal of the Epic exclusivity deal and the Epic Game Store in general. For all its problems, they do offer good amounts of money to developers.
I don't see the problem with that. The
problems with the Epic Game Store for me are more the problems with epic.
Well, sure. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. But I just don't think that the model is a problem.
No.
Everyone gets so angry about them, like, paying money for exclusives. It's like, great. These people are gonna get to, like, get paid for their work.
Yeah, like, the thing with that, too, and if we don't want to stray too far off topic, 'cause that's, like, a side quest topic. But, like, it's not even, like, platform exclusivity. Like, if you have a PC, you can get it. It's not taking it away from you. Unlike, like, PlayStation or Xbox exclusivity, which I do sort of get, like, when people are like, ugh, because they're disappointed that they don't own that system or whatever.
I know, but I just feel like there's not the hatred in the same way. I mean, maybe there will be in this 5th generation because, oh my gosh, the console wars are so toxic. But
it's funny, the console wars now, because you can tell that Microsoft just doesn't care.
Yeah.
They don't care. Like, they got a new console, you can buy it if you want, but as long as you stay signed up for Xbox Game Pass, they're fine.
Anyway, yeah, I just think it's interesting, the different marketplace now. Because, of course, on the other hand, this guy was talking about, well, like, Nintendo does, like, the Nindies now and all that stuff, which, like, you never would have seen 10 years ago.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed with, like, this new generation is, like, all the indies that are pretty prominently featured in, like, Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox, like, first-party presentations.
Yeah.
Which, whatever. I wasn't paying too much attention when the PlayStation 4 came out, but it feels like it's new. Like a new trend.
Oh, definitely. But at the same time, there's way, 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 way more games vying for those couple of spots.
Yep.
Well, finally, last but not least, we were talking about Sushi Man, and we were talking about, what did you say? What was your alternate version of Meat Boy?
Impossible Burger Man.
Thank you, Impossible Burger Man. Well, there actually was a PETA parody in 2010.
Oh, of course.
Super Tofu Boy. And in response, Teammate apparently made Tofu Boy a playable character.
That's great.
In the game.
That's a good response.
I agree. Anyway, hopefully someday Super Meat Boy Forever comes out. It's supposed to be like a procedurally generated kind of game that adapts in difficulty level, which the developer just described as, when the team like split up and we were like reconceptualizing this, I decided I was going to go all out. Go Kojima on it. It's like, okay. Cool.
I can't wait for my Meat Boy to have to carry 4 backpacks and his meat bandage baby everywhere he jumps.
His meat bandage baby actually gets stolen, so
good.
Nice try.
Darn. But that's not Kojima, man. You gotta have the baby. It's gotta be there. When it cries, it's gotta cry through your controller.
God, controller sounds drive me nuts.
The thing is, it feels good with the baby, right? Because it's supposed to drive you nuts. The baby is crying.
Don't give up! Can I get a mod for Death Stranding where the baby is Goofy?
I hope somebody's made that. That would be good.
Well, are you ready to talk about this week's new game?
Sure, let's do it.
So, I just did it.
Just the one ghost.
Ghost of Tsushima. It just flows nice as Ghosts of Tsushima, doesn't it, though?
It kind of does.
There's a nice flow to it. I feel like a speedrunner.
There's a nice parallelness of the TS to the ST to TS.
Should probably write into Sucker Punch and be like, the game seems cool, but had you thought about naming it Ghosts? Really, that's what they should have called the DLC, the new update.
Yeah.
Ghost of Tsushima Legends? That's boring.
No. Just confuse everybody.
That's broke.
By just adding an S.
Ghosts of Tsushima. That's woke. Anyway, Ghost of Tsushima is an open-world, action-adventure, samurai stealth game from Sucker Punch Productions that was a console PS4 exclusive that came out in July of this year, July of 2020. Yes, folks, if you're keeping track, that was 3 months ago.
Yep.
for those who are still tracking the calendar.
In Ghosts of Tsushima.
You just did it. Ghost.
No, I that's just the way my mouth works. I did just say ghost.
Okay.
Of Tsushima, you play as Jin, who is a samurai, fighting to protect the island of Tsushima from the Mongol invasion. And you go around doing samurai things, except you're also the titular ghost who goes against samurai honor to fight the Mongols. So the whole gimmick of it is that you can go either into combat situations as Jin the samurai or as Ghost, and approach the situation in different ways through those two kind of modes.
It's a new kind of morality system. The samurai to ninja spectrum.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure.
Just saying. Apparently, the more ghost-like you get to, it gets stormy. The weather gets stormier.
Oh.
I was reading about that.
Interesting.
I was like, ooh, what a touch.
So you can stealth better. Very good.
Yeah.
You blend in with the gray. Yeah, there's even, like, the whole, like, you change your look depending on which, so that's the whole, like, cosmetic morality from Fable. I got a theme going on.
I'm sure they were directly inspired by Fable.
I'm sure they were.
Well, Ghost of Tsushima really happened.
Sort of.
But yeah, by which I mean it didn't really happen, but it is based on a real Mongol invasion of Japan in 1271.
Yes.
And originally they were going to use like all sorts of real names and real people, and then someone was like, that might be offensive. And they were like, yeah, I guess so. And made up a bunch of characters instead.
Yeah, I think if you were going to do that, you'd have to either go, like, really absurd with it or really accurate with it, and Ghost of Tsushima is neither of those. It exists in, like, the sort of nebulous Japan historical setting of, like, cinema, rather than of history.
Exactly. Now, to be fair, it does sound like they did a lot of work to know the history and then consciously depart from it.
Yeah, sure.
Or at least they've made the point of pretending that they did that in interviews, which even that would be a step forward probably for the industry in general. But in particular, like, I was reading some stuff with one of the lead developers about like they chose to have haiku.
Yeah,
that almost came out incorrectly. They chose to have haiku poems in the game as opposed to like a more historically accurate form. But he was like, you know, some people know what a haiku is. Nobody knew outside of Japan this other form. Even though apparently in the Japanese like version, they did put in the correct poems because it would read so anachronistic.
Interesting.
But same thing with like, they were like, the katana is so iconically in cinema the samurai weapon. And actually, it really, like, to me, if you were really accurate, it would have been a different kind of sword. But, like, we couldn't not have the katana.
Yeah.
Here.
I was reading, like, a little, like, somebody on Kotaku is really into sake brewing. And so they were talking about how, like, the sake barrels, like, actually wouldn't have been invented yet. But, like, if you go to, like, a sake museum, like, this is what you would see as, like, old-time sake anyway. So, like, even over in Japan, unless you were, like, really into sake, it probably wouldn't stand out to you as anachronistic, and, like, little stuff like that. Or there's stuff of, like, you know, like, it's for the sake of cinema, right? But, like, different, like, plants that do not grow all at the same time are all growing at the same time. But, you know, that's fair. You want to put the pretty flowers in. I understand.
Especially in this game, which is really, really concerned with being beautiful.
Yes. Yes, it is definitely that. Whether you like this game or not, I'm pretty sure everybody can agree that it is a very stunning looking game.
As you've maybe already picked up, if you know anything about samurai movies, it's very heavily influenced by the work of Akira Kurosawa. especially Seven Samurai. They all talk about Seven Samurai like 20 times in every interview.
I feel like that's the only Kurosawa film that people know.
They talked about some other ones, but you're absolutely right that it's probably the only title that I could name. And, you know, with including the, like, very, you know, like, heavily promoted, I feel like you can play in Kurosawa mode, where you get that kind of, like, black and white aesthetic over the whole thing.
I think that's a little, like, one, it feels silly, because it's not like all of Kurosawa's films were in black and white. Sure, maybe his more iconic ones were, but it's not all his filmography. And two, like, the whole reason Ghost stands out is because it has such good color, right? Like, it stands out from a lot of other, like, this generation's big games because it just uses such startling color. And, like, why would you take that away? What is the point to put, like, a black and white filter over everything?
Well, I think part of the point is that this game has a really, really robust photo mode. And almost
sure, photo filters are fine. I just don't understand why you would choose to play the whole game with it in black and white.
Well, it's a cool marketing gimmick.
Sure.
I don't know.
I think the other thing is, like, they put a lot of effort into, like, showcasing, like, their Japanese dub, so you can, like, play it like it's a samurai movie, except they didn't change the lip flaps for the Japanese dub, so I don't fully understand why they pushed that so hard if they weren't going to, you know, polish it to a sheen.
Yeah, I saw a lot of stuff on Twitter at the time that it came out of people saying, well, why did they match it to the English dub? When, you know, if you're thinking about a samurai movie, you're really used to the idea of, like, the English is not going to match up to the lips. So why, if they were going to pick one, did they pick the English as opposed to the Japanese? And of course, it is probably because Sucker Punch is a Washington State-based studio.
Yes, they are a Western studio.
But I would be interested, I mean, I'm interested in this for the upcoming, for Yakuza Like a Dragon, too. I would be interested to see the stats on, you know, what percentage of players play it in English versus in Japanese. Because as much as there was a lot of grousing on Twitter about it, I bet that the Western folks who played in Japanese are the overwhelming minority.
Yeah.
I wouldn't feel that way if this was more of like an indie game or a mid-sales tier kind of game. But since Ghost of Tsushima became the best-selling, fastest-selling first-party original IP on PS4, like, a lot of people are playing this.
Yeah.
And they're not all nerds.
I know. For me, it's like they really, like, forefront the choice, is my impression of it, right? Like, you don't have to go into the options menu to change it to Japanese. Like, they call it, like, samurai mode or something.
That's dumb, too. But, yeah, okay.
To change it to Japanese. It's not just like you change the audio language in the options menu. So, it does feel a little bit like, you have that option, but, you know, maybe you hide it in settings for the really nerdy people rather than being like, yes, there's Japanese people, but it doesn't match the lip flaps. So that's fine. Don't worry about it. You know?
Do you have a sense of how hard it is to do lip flaps?
Oh, yeah, I know.
Is it? No, that was a genuine question. I didn't mean that as a hypothetical question.
Oh,
I mean
it's hard, right? Like, it's animating. Right? Like, it's extra animating, and that's a lot of extra animating for stuff. There is, like, you can see in Final Fantasy VII is a good example. They use, like, some sort of AI algorithm thing to try and make the computer just do it automatically with, like, preset animations, basically. So, like, you especially see that in, like, when you're talking to people for, like, the side quests, and it looks a little weird still, but it does mean that there's not that extra animation work to make all the things fit.
Well, fair enough.
Yeah. It just, the question isn't, like, why didn't they do it? The question is, like, why did they center it so heavily if they weren't going to do it?
What are the odds that they do it for the PS5 remaster?
Probably pretty good. Yeah.
That's my feeling, too.
Yeah.
Well, despite being really well signed, I feel like Ghost of Tsushima got good reviews.
Yeah.
Some people really loved it. Japan Famitsu gave it a 40 out of 40, which is nutty. Because they gave, like, 2 others for, like, Western games. But yeah, it's, like, from what I read, it's, like, it's really pretty, but it's a little bit repetitive. And it's an open world game, but it's not quite as, like... It's just not quite as full as you might want it to be.
I read mostly that it seemed to have side quests that weren't super necessary. So in some ways, like, it was full, but it didn't feel substantial at the same time. But yeah, I think overall it got solid reviews and that everybody enjoyed it. But it wasn't necessarily a whole ton of people's, like, at least among critics. I'm sure there's lots of players who really, really loved it. But that it sort of fell short in certain elements.
Which is a shame, because, I mean, a Ghost of Tsushima is definitely... you're right, it just I start thinking about saying Tsushima, and I say ghosts. GFT, as much as it is very much not really my kind of game, although, I don't know, I've seen a lot of chatter, mostly derogatory, though, of it being like Assassin's Creed Japan.
Yeah.
Which, you know what, I did enjoy the first Assassin's Creed that I played. But as much as like an open world game with no waypoints is not my vibe. I know that they're like environmentally based. You can
follow
like,
the wind.
cues.
Yes.
I recognize that. But when I read no waypoints, I was like, we out of here. Like, absolutely not. No. We need a side quest tracker. As much as it's not my kind of game, it always, like, you know, I like to see original IPs do well. Across all forms of cultural media, to be honest.
Well, it certainly did well financially.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It would have been nice if the reviews had been good, great, not, like, good.
Yeah.
Although, I don't know, whatever. Like, I don't need more open world games. So, maybe I should be pleased. But they did just release this week. I feel like we've had so many... Maybe I'm just paying more attention to gaming news because I don't go anywhere anymore.
Probably.
But, like, they did just release this week, the 1.1 update.
Yep.
Which allows you to, pet the dogs.
Yep.
Thank God.
You could pet the foxes before.
Well, but, come on. Is there a Twitter account for that?
I'm pretty sure they tweeted about it on Can You Pet the
I
Dog?
do think they tweeted about it too, but it's not the name of the account, is it? Probably tweeted about it on Casual Friday. Just saying.
As much as I think the people who are skeptical or, like, annoyed by dog petting in video games are a little bit, like, find something else to be upset about, I do think it's interesting how much, like, that account has become factored into choices that game developers have made. You know?
Imagine your Twitter being that influential.
Like, he gets review codes now to, like, review it and assure that you can indeed pet the dog.
I could have started that, you know? I really think all the anger about it is everyone thinking, like, I could have had this idea. This could have been me.
Yeah.
And I just did it. And now I, don't get review codes.
Yep.
But yeah, in addition to that, they also introduced a multiplayer mode, not called Ghosts of Tsushima.
No.
But called Ghost of Tsushima Legends. It's online co-op, which, F that.
I mean, it takes a lot. It's definitely a different coding set to set up offline multiplayer. Right? You can't just do both in one fell swoop. It's extra work. And you can't not do online multiplayer, especially now.
What about me?
I can't just you can't drive over to your homie's house and be like, heck yeah, let's Ghosts of Tsushima this place up now, because you'll get each other sick. So.
You're absolutely right. At the same time, I know no one who owns this game. So you think I'm gonna convince my friend to buy a $60 game to play this with me? No. I'm gonna convince Josh to buy a $60 game to play this with me. Just once. What am I gonna do? Get 2 PS4s and set up 2 televisions in my home?
You could. You could do it.
Where would I put that?
You have a bigger apartment now, so I'm sure there's space somewhere.
Not if I want to hang my gigantic Kingdom Hearts Orchestra poster on the wall.
You push the bed to the middle of the room, and then you have TVs set up on either side, and then you can sit back to back and play together.
You know, I'm looking at the room right now, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe. Maybe I could do that. I did hang up some posters, but I could take them down. Anyway, in Legends, it's like, so in the original Ghost of Tsushima, despite, you know, the ghost moniker that you take on, you're not really a ghost. It's just like a cool name.
Yes, he is not undead or dead. He is
deadish.
He is
maybe dead adjacent.
He's sort of dead adjacent.
You are kind of. You do get left for dead in kind of the opening fight. So in some ways you are dead adjacent.
There you go.
But yeah, it's so there's no like supernatural stuff in the main campaign. But then Ghost of Tsushima is like all about mythology and folklore and those kinds of based missions. And it was free, which everyone was like, "Oh my god, a free update!" Which, you know what, not wrongly so, but still.
I don't know. I feel like a lot of games get at least a couple of free updates nowadays.
I guess so, but like a full new online multiplayer mode.
Guess so. Yeah.
I mean, I guess if they didn't include it, people would have been like, ugh, they released a game unfinished. They're tricking me into paying more money. So, you know, there's that. You can't win. Anyway, are you ready to mash these up?
Oh boy. I'm so ready.
It's called Katana Zero.
It's done. We've already made it. It's released to the world. That was us. We made it. No, we didn't.
Yeah.
We didn't make it.
We would never make a game that had that little lore.
Yes.
Or so much lore that was not explained at all. Maybe we would make that game, actually.
Yeah, I feel like we would, actually, yeah. That's the sort of game I like, you know? Just lots of lore. I don't care why.
No explanation.
No. You can shove the explanations, like, in a library or something that I won't go read, but somebody else can.
Yeah.
That's my preferred type of game.
Okay, so you're a historical butcher.
Yeah.
Historical butcher simulator.
And you just live out your life butchering your meat. That sounds awful. That sounds like an awful game. I hate it.
Thanks. That was my first idea. What's your first idea?
I'm sorry, I was with you for a second and then I was like, you slaughter pig simulator.
I was thinking more of like you wield the like dual cleavers. And
so like Fruit Ninja, except it's meat.
Well, no, I was not thinking
like
of the
Beat
mechanics.
Saber, except you're chopping meat.
It's not a rhythm game. It's not a rhythm game.
I was just thinking about like dual wielding. That's what I was thinking about. The cleavers.
But I'm thinking that there's a way that you could be a pretty dope samurai type with like 2 meat cleavers.
I would watch that show, yeah.
If only the listeners could see me demonstrating my like
Malin is doing
fluid water stance.
Truly incredible moves with her imaginary meat cleaver. I wish that you could see them and be awed by, you know. You can tell she took dance classes. That's all I'll say.
I did. I'm a trained dancer. Sorry, Christine. I don't have any idea what the gameplay would be for Super Ghost of Cleaver.
You're chopping meat. You gotta chop the meat.
That does not take anything from either of these games.
There's meat. There's meat in the Meat Boy.
No.
He's got meat juices.
Stop. It's a beautiful 3D platformer.
Okay. So it's Ori with meat cleavers.
Yeah, but it would have to be set in like a historic. It's a video game version of Upton Sinclair's The Jungle.
boy.
Highly historically accurate.
Somebody out there listening was like, huh, you're really onto something there. And to that person who's already gone and cannot heed this warning, I say, no. Don't do it.
It's super historically accurate. The meat is highly realistic.
No, okay,
Really
okay.
get to see how
You're
the
a
sausage gets
samurai.
made.
You're a samurai with meat cleavers. Well, you're not really a samurai, I guess, then. You're a fighter with some meat cleavers. Yeah. You wear the samurai clothes, but you're not. We won't use the term samurai. You're just supposed to sort of evoke it.
Okay. I thought there was gonna be more. Like, I've already said this. I thought there was gonna be more to it than that.
I'm building it. You have to say it out loud to sort of think about it, right? So we've got the character in mind now.
Yeah.
Meat cleaver man. He lives in a beautiful world full of color, unless you don't want to see color because you hate color, in that which case you can turn on no meat juice mode.
Okay, I'm listening.
You like, okay, so we're sort of gonna flip it on its head, right? You like your meat cleaver ways, right? You think it's good, effective, you're like, heck yeah. But then somebody with, like, bearing and honor comes to town and tries to teach you the ways of proper fighting. And you have to decide whether you want to keep your meat cleavers or if you want to abandon them to become something, more noble than meat cleaver man.
Okay, I like that, because I like the idea of, like, being able to learn the, like, noble stances but use them with cleavers.
Yeah.
Or to fight with the, like, samurai noble style, but, like, oh no, what am I saying? Like the samurai, like, sword and equipment, but like you're a butcher. I like the gameplay possibilities there.
Uh-huh.
I think the driving story has to be, taken from Super Meat Boy, of, like, someone you love has been stolen.
Sure.
Probably. And that's what drives you to leave your meat chopping ways behind.
But where does the feces clone come into this, though?
So, like, the way that you earn money and, like and travel around the world is by, like, selling your meat.
Okay. I really thought you were going somewhere else with that.
But sometimes if you don't, like, store it correctly, you can get, like, parasites in it.
Okay.
We'll stop there.
Okay.
Do you see?
Yes. Or your meat comes alive and you have to fight it.
Where did that come from?
I don't know. I was thinking about parasites. Bring a little Yakuza into this. It's like a Mr. Shakedown encounter, except you haven't been taking good care of your product.
No.
And so if you lose against the parasite-infested meat, you lose all that meat. And can no longer, you have to regather meat to sell.
I really think Katana Zero is more promising.
I think so too. It's already proven.
Oh, well. Listeners, do you have a better idea of how to... I like the idea of the meat cleaver and samurai division.
Sure.
Like, low combat versus high combat.
Yeah.
Not like stealth combat versus noble combat. Like, poor combat versus rich combat. That's kind of fun. But I don't know where to go from there. So, listeners, if you have ideas for, like, a plot for this game, you should hit us up on social media.
Again, I really think you could just fight against the parasitic meat version of yourself. It's symbolic.
Okay, it's like we'd call it the meat ghost.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And it turns out it was you all along.
And at the end, the, like, kicker at the end is that we're all made of meat.
Yes.
I think you've been watching too much Hannibal.
It's metaphorical.
Oh, listeners, yeah, do you have a better way to craft this cleaver story that we've sketched out for you today? Have you played Super Meat Boy? Did you think it was super hard? Have you played Ghost of Tsushima? Have you figured out how to refer to it without pluralizing the first word? If the answer to any of those questions is yes, no, or maybe, you should hit us up on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. So check us out there for our occasional thoughts on games and gaming news. Definitely check out the YouTube to watch Emma's series On Topic Corner and Play This. And check us out because it'll be the first place that you'll see new posts on our website. Alternately, you can go directly to our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games that are in the hat that Emma's about to pull from, and see all the latest on our blog, featuring long-running series Click Good Boyfriend, probably a bonus edition coming soon as we play the Melody of Memory demo over here, and Split Screen, where Emma and I are watching My Hero Academia and Coffee Prince. And most important, I'm like, I'm done. But I'm not done, because I have to tell you to subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Casts, anywhere you can find podcasts. You can find Talk This. So in a moment, Emma's gonna, I'll let you get the hat all.
I'm ready. I'm ready to go.
Oh, dang. All right. Well, Emma is going to pull the games that we're going to be talking about in 2 weeks on our next main edition of the show. So, Emma, what's our old game going to be?
For our old game, we'll be going deep into our repressed memories to talk about Romance of the Three Kingdoms. And for our new game, we will be talking about Fall Guys.
Oh, great. Perfect.
To be honest, I don't remember playing Romance of the Three Kingdoms, but maybe I will when we go look at it.
I remember getting it from not even Blockbuster, from like a non-chain video store.
And really the question is, like, which one of the 14 did we play?
At one point, I think I had figured it out, but I'm going to have to go back and... Thank goodness we picked Fall Guys so I don't have to play Romance of the Three Kingdoms, but should I play it?
I think maybe you should anyway, to be honest.
I'm gonna have to see. Well, get excited for that in a couple of weeks, folks. It'll be like an almost Halloween edition of Talk This.
Oh yeah.
Right around Halloween edition.
The spookiest game of Fall Guys.
I think.
That's true. Nothing is spookier than what's inside the Fall Guy.
They've got a lot of costumes, is what I was going to say.
Not
but
true.
You took it to a dark place. Next week, though, it's a side quest edition of the podcast, where we pick a topic and talk about it. That pretty much sums it up.
It's your turn, right?
It is my turn. I swear I had a great idea for this, like 3 days ago. And I like saw something, I like read something, I was like, this is perfect, and I'm gonna be able to say on the show what my side quest is. And I don't remember what it was.
That's unfortunate.
I've been kicking around the idea of talking about demos and what makes a good demo. So I was, obviously with Kingdom Hearts. But that may or may not be the final topic. We'll see if my stroke of genius returns to me.
I hope it does.
Yeah, me too.
Well, until then, do you want to use your stroke of genius to sign us off?
Absolutely. Folks, thanks for listening to another episode of Talk This.
I don't say it here.
It's dangerous to podcast alone. And this week, whether it's meat or tofu, I hope that you have singular things that should be singular and plural things that should be plural, whether that's cleavers or swords.